Hello, everybody. I'm putting my video up here very quickly. 1 second. Made new stuff. Let's see if I can get it. There we go. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Nervous Ghost Press Open Mic Episode 4, Return of the Ghost. We've been gone for a while. My name is Matthew Mejia. I am the publisher and CEO of Nervous Ghost Press. We are now officially Nervous Ghost Press Inc., which is fantastic. We are a independent nonprofit seeking our 501c3 IRS exempt status, and I'll share a little bit about the press in a little bit. I want to welcome everyone, our guest speakers, our community members, those who will share some work. Some of them I've never met before, some of them I do know, and I'm very excited. I've updated the system, I think, if you can see on the screen, and I'm learning how to use all the screens. I got too many screens in front of me, and it's really complicated, but I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to share with the community, to share our work. A little bit about the press. Nervous Ghost Press is a champion and an advocate for the arts. We support all artists, regardless of where you're from, who you are, what you believe in, as long as you believe in the art. And we pride ourselves in being able to unify through art, as art is our great unifier. Art transcends hate and injustice and all of these other things. It brings us together through our shared traumas, compassion, and love. We're able to take the dark and turn it into something beautiful. We're able to take the hatred and all the anger and add color to an otherwise dull black and white world. We currently have 2 new books that are in production, and one of the authors is here today. I'm not going to speak too much about it because we want to save that for a cool interview kind of experience. And it's a poetry collection, a novel. Fantastic work. I'm super excited to have them come out in March, April of 2022. And so stay tuned to that. Our Nervous Ghost Press open mics are open to anyone, anywhere. We're virtual, and when we come back in person, we'll still be virtual. We'll have a virtual aspect of everything that we're doing to have people coming from all across the country, all across the world, and so on. And so connect with us. Follow us on all the screens. Follow us on all the things. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's where you're watching it here. Nervous Ghost Live. And of course, www.nervousghostpress.org, and you can reach me at any of those accounts, or ghost@nervousghostpress.org. You can reach out to us with any questions, with anything you need, and I always reply. All right. I got my notes here. So Ghost Dennis, our editor-in-chief Dennis, he can't be here today, but we're always going to shout out and send some positive vibes. Hope you're doing all right, Dennis. If you watch this later, which you should watch this later, right? We got to make him watch it later. And make sure to like our accounts, comment, subscribe, chat in the box. I'll be looking at it here and there. And so we'll get started. I have a poem for all of you that I'll share before I give the virtual floor to the prizes of our event today. Certainly not myself. I bet you'd follow your friends off a cliff. Oh, also I got paper, old school. A steady weakness across and over mountains. Lost before pillagers, before the coronation of conflict, bestowed and drafted treaty after treaty of acceptable punishment passed down by the hands of the brave. Left to bequeath only trauma, and was forsaken not by the one, by not the idols. Just whispers and secrets aren't to be told, only felt and hidden, a masquerade of liberation of the enlightened. Taking care of the weak and feeble, educating the ignored and forgotten, without visions of ancestors, painful. Hopeful for who was yet to come, saviors without prophecy, and so damned. The boogeyman is not far behind. Arrogance is a fault worn proudly when painting only one of 2, and there are more than what's on display. Mannequins without strings, The marionette manipulated no more by the mind still young, in its ever pure and chaste glory be to the mighty and the meek, the good and the old are dreamers, exorbitantly so swayed by music but not revolution. When sleep is unrequited, the unrest burrows deeper, slower until nothing is left but rage. Speak with words of violence, heavy in pride and statuesque autonomy, waiting for what was promised to portraits of dust and fire, obediently waiting for muses to amusingly preach fables left in wonder, harps echo through forests, innocently watching the clouds donated freedom for allegiance, waiting for the one to save them from the one who made them. The humor is not lost when artists are chosen to heal the sick. Are they grayed out in retribution for whom is sought by the many? Last chance without veils. Last chance without veils. Last chance without veils. All right, so now I get to practice with this other screen here and see how we do. All right, let's turn it on. I don't have a cool person to do this. So one thing I'm realizing for anybody out there, and maybe this is a cool thing to hear or not, but what I love about being a small operation right now is I get to learn all of this cool stuff. I get to dive into it, stress out about it, watch 1,000 videos, read 1,000 articles, and I can't afford to hire 15,000 people one day, absolutely. But right now I'm having fun, with all of this. All right, here we go. And so our first speaker, and every speaker here can share a little bit about themselves. Before they speak, let me unmute this thing. And when you're ready, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Tumanian. Thanks for having me today. I'm going to be reading from my poetry collection, Love in the Time of Corona. So I think I'll just start off with the title poem. So I call this book my quarantine baby. This was inspired by COVID and quarantine. So I'll start with the title poem, Love in the Time of Corona. I called my lover to let him know that no pestilence from hell could keep me away from him much longer. Distance makes the heart grow fonder, so we drove through deserted streets, met on the sidewalk by a lamppost, and we stared into eyes filled with more fear than longing. He handed me a blue hydrangea, a gesture of apology for his silence, his aloofness in these times of darkness. When he put his gloved hand on my face to kiss me through my mask, I couldn't help but take a few steps back. Why not to write? Why not to write? Because when the ink pierces through paper, the sharpest pain becomes a throbbing ache, and the scar grows bigger somehow. It feels more deeply etched. I can't figure out whether the act of writing provides a quick rebirth or a slow and painful death. The same way I can't determine if thinking about you is comforting or destroying me. As I was uttering your name, I wrote it on the sand, but the waves washed it away. I engraved it on my heart. Now it calls you every day. The next one is called The Day Hope Died. Again, this is in the midst of the pandemic. The day hope died. Why does fear tiptoe on my rooftop like a robber trying to break into my home? Where will hope be next spring if our newly blossomed orange tree died this morning? If disappointment were a pill, I'd crush a dose in every meal and wash it down with wine. Love circles like fireflies over a blazing pit, but his become a loud shadow I can't touch or feel. I'm worried because the future is uncertain, and I'm nostalgic about a past we had grown to resent. If hope had wings, it would hover around us like a fairy, sprinkling pixie dust on our harvest. But shelves at the grocery stores are still empty, and my appetite has grown voracious. So I drink more coffee to taste the bitterness I've begun to feel. The universe of us. Thank you. The universe of me is a shadow of skeletons where love weaves and falls through ribs that once housed a heart. The universe of you is a whirlpool where syllables slam against the hollow skull, where words dissipate across the wall. The universe of us is composed of muddy puddles I no longer wish to splash in with my floral rubber boots. Sometimes it takes a pandemic to clear away the clouds. And I'll end with the Summer of Locusts. I have a sexy poem I wanted to end with, but I think I'm going to end with this. If we have time, we'll come back. But the Summer of Locusts. It's been the summer of locusts, and not just the swarm of grasshoppers devouring crops, threatening the food supply of millions of people. It's been the year of other locust like raids on the human race, an unforgiving pandemic, countless deaths, destructive explosions, earthquakes and fires, political unrest, spiritual famine, psychological warfare, social starvation, loss, loneliness, heartache, the plague of fear and swarming panic spread across fields of hopelessness where we persistently plant seeds of hope. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. And a couple things that I wrote down that I really felt and I kind of resonated with was the hope. And it wasn't a lot of it. Even in these situations that we find ourselves in, the trauma, the chaos, the confusion, there's still that kind of what else is out there, what's next, what can we do? And that's those seeds of hope. And also the why not to write. And this is something that I truly believe and that I try to impart into the press every single day, and everything that I do in the classroom is writing allows us to hope. Writing allows us, and this thing up here, to look at something and go, hey, wait a minute. What else is there? How can I create this and make it better, stronger? How can I be better or stronger, of course, in our, in this area also, as where the darkness lives, right? But we can also put it into words, and I tell my students all the time, we take something out of our heart and our brain, we put it on paper, we can control it. And we can manipulate the paper, we can manipulate the page, we can make it less scary or more scary even, depending on what we're trying to do. But we can access with just a little pen all of those things. And so keep writing, I love it. And thank you for joining us. And of course, if we have time later, absolutely share that other poem too. I want to hear it. And so our next speaker here is hold on, I got my list here. I think I got it. Their book is coming out in March. This is one of the poets, and you get a sneak peek into their work. And one of these days we'll be posting up an actual one-on-one interview about the work, the inspiration, where it comes from, all of those things. So stay tuned. And Amanda, if you have anything you want to share, go ahead. Take it away, Amanda.
Oh shit, I didn't know there was going to be an interview. I kind of thought that would be something at some point. Hey. I always sign up for these open mics. It's always a pleasure to be part of them. Even if I don't always know what I'm going to read, I'm always like, I got to be part of it. I feel like, I've known since the start when this press was just coming together. So I feel like part of the process. So I feel like I should be called Ghost Amanda at some points. But today I'm reading a poem that I wrote in college for one of my poetry workshop classes. It feels pretty on theme for how I feel after having just turned 26 and being booted off my father's health insurance, and now I have a gap in insurance and being disabled and feeling kind of the weight of, holy shit, I hope nothing happens. So this is Fragments of the Superfuck, and it's a poem written in 20 parts, but don't worry, they're short. Virgin. I'm trying to hide in the photo, behind a baggy college sweatshirt, behind a glass of wine, behind a lanyard, behind a glimpse, behind my eyes, behind my hair, behind my body. Prude. Captured is the uncomfortable girl squirming to be let out. Captured is the performance of youth. Held there is student life. The best time of your life is spent trapped in your mind. Snog. I'm pulled to the glass of wine, the promise of release, the promise of finally feeling loose. It's the only round shape I'm comfortable with. Hickey. At the center is the only thing you've ever been, all you've ever done. Be a student. Access, not accessible. Cockblock. Just stop your crying. It's a sign of the times. Stud. You're in the ocean, wet hair swept in front of your giggling face, tattoos out. Must be nice. Masturbating. I can't stop looking at your hands. They're together like you're praying, or a shy schoolgirl being coy. And your smile, like a secret chuckle. I want to playfully splash water at you and run away shrieking when you retaliate. I imagine cuddling under the sheets after our day in the sun. That would be nice. Oh. Why did you get a butterfly where your boobs would be? Did people give you a hard time about it? Call you feminine? Is that why you wear silky floral suits? Are you laughing at them? What about the leaves on your hips? What about any of your tattoos? What does any of it mean? Why don't you share? Does that question annoy you? Do you hate questions? Or do you like attention? Do you like this photo? Have you seen it? Do I like this picture? Do I like you? Player. Men can't be soft, so that softness has to be stolen. It's guarded, and a photographer stole this moment, and I'm consuming that. Daddy. I can't think of a lyric I misheard. When you sing, I can hear every word. Sacred sound. Though when you talk, your voice rumbles out of my hands. I fall off the rock wall I'm climbing. I feel weird with your picture by my ear because you're too soft in the picture and I'm imagining things. I feel like you're whispering, and I'm way too shy to lean closer to when your lips would bump my ear. Blow. He tries to combat darkness, tries to tell others, treat people with kindness, but that's too simple, too light. Optimism flies from him. She tries to combat darkness, tries to tell others, treat me with kindness, but that's for children, too idealistic. The real world flies into her. Deep throat. Middle-aged white men are fucking absurd when they talk about young people. On his solo debut, the One Direction heartthrob claims his turf as a true rock and roll prince, a sunshine Superman, a cosmic dancer in touch with his introspective acoustic side as well as his glam flash. They can't be serious. We're not real. We're not people. Must be nice when nothing can touch you. Pegging. Wine, shoulders, hair, tattoos, sweatshirt, chest, secrets, tattoos, tattoos, tattoos. Cover yourself in art because they can't take away what is etched in your skin. Tattoos are an act of survival. The meanings are ours. They can't take art and memory away from us. Anal. It's just a sign of the times. Skeleton students waiting in line for their turn to get fucked over and over again. Booty call. I wish you'd sing Landslide by Fleetwood Mac. It'd probably have some black and white video, just you on stage. You could get away with that kind of effort. Just let the act speak for itself. No need for glittery leotards and backup dancers. Must be nice. Balls deep. Don't fucking look at me, Sunshine Superman. Fuck me into the mattress. Fuck me, fuck me, fuck me, fucking fuck a fuck. Sunshine, shimmering, shiny, super fuck me, man. Fuck me into the sun. Hitting home. I only see my tattoos. I only give myself permission to see your tattoos. The rest looks naked. I only see my body when I have to. Otherwise, I don't fucking look, don't fucking touch, don't fucking acknowledge having one. I'm only a half-functioning brain. Spanked. Trying to catch up with the speed of getting fucked is a sign of the times. Pull out. What the fuck is going on? Started taking fucking pictures of your body and putting them on mine. Fucking creepy, fucking fangirl, fucking yikes, fucking yikes, fucking yikes, fucking yikes. A fragmented body, a desire to be alternative while still hopelessly contributing to the system. Wow, so rebel, so much punk. Bukaki. We are uncomfortable. We hide our bodies. We try to escape the systems we are hopelessly contributing to. We want to be revolutionary even though we are surrounded by eyes. We poke them, but they pop back more solid than before. We tattoo ourselves in dorm rooms despite the risks. We try to keep up. We try to keep up. We try to keep up. We decapitate ourselves, our skulls rolling away and get run over by some baby boomer booming something about bootstraps. We spit statistics about how the times are different than when they were young into our $2.99 bottle of wine. We can't provide for ourselves anymore. We're graduating to still have to work at Starbucks until we can get an even higher degree that still won't raise our salary enough. We're fucked. We're fucked. We're fucked, fucked, fucked. I'm such an optimist.
Whoops, I had pushed the wrong button. All right, thank you, Amanda. And if any of you enjoyed Amanda's work, you could see more of it in this. Our first title, Writing for Life, an anthology from Nervous Ghost Press, available at www.nervousghostpress.com. And Amanda, a few quotes that stood out to me. I don't want to share too much because, of course, we have to have our interview. And that's where we really get into the nitty-gritty is must be nice, must be nice, must be nice. Trapped in your mind and the skulls rolling away. And one of your lines, at the center is all we've ever done, reminded me of a physics professor that I had back in college. And he said, you know, we are the center of our universes because we're always looking out. And we turn around, we're still in the middle. Everything is outside. It's always us. And as long as we, we're not jerks about it, then I think it's not so bad. But we could be jerks about it too. And if you are a jerk, write down your jerk thoughts in this Nervous Ghost Press journal, also available at www.nervousghostpress.com. Open 24 hours a day because it's on the internet and the internet doesn't sleep.
It's true. I wrote, the whole manuscript that is coming in March next year. I wrote the whole thing in that journal, in one of those journals. So
That's
get
what's
one.
up.
What can happen in those journals?
That's what's up. And so get your journals because they're super cool. It allows us to write like we spoke about earlier. We have the opportunity, and writing gives us the creative freedom to say what we want, when we want, how we want it. Nobody can tell us otherwise. And so thank you, Amanda. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sharing your work. Our next speaker is someone who has been here before, who's a friend of the press, a friend of all of us, a personal friend and a professional friend. And you can share a little bit about yourself, whatever you feel like. We're excited to have you, excited to see you. Kimani.
Hi. I don't know what to say about myself at this point in time. I think I am a multi-dimensional artist. I think that's about where we land on me talking about me. But I have 2 poems and I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to read. So let's get into it. Black girl tired. Black girl exhausted from screaming and bleeding, and Black girl no longer wants to be preoccupied with death, face to face with death, sleeping with death on the other side of the door, the bed, the wall, the street, the state, the city, the state, the government, the state, the world. Black girls crumbled into pieces before, risen time and time again from ashes. Black girl never known safety. Even Black girl father's arms bruised. Black girl cannot escape to music even. Black girl only hears wet, only desire, submission, erasure. Black girl forced to clean yet another mess not of her making, wrung out and left to dry alone. Black girl resurfaces under sparkling water 4 days later, still breathing, and still. That's one. Thank you. The second one is probably just as long, but slightly different. This ocean has turned to blood too many times, dripping digits to pretend it's all still water. Ancient songs ring through the waves and crash into wave. Isn't it massive? I mean, wonderful. They're the same thing, no? Great. To be deserving and enough has never been my strongest point in the mirror. I know the language of flyaway curls and forehead kisses. To be desired and loved is all I could hope for. Given to myself so liberally from the outside world, a drying well, an oasis in impossible sands. 8 minutes ago, I saw a ghost and thought myself dead in the water all those years ago. I have learned nothing from the drowning, learned nothing from skipping double dutch with the pieces you ripped from me, learned nothing from the slime of having to steal them back in the first place. Anyways, it was 6 minutes ago that my heart returned from missing, from kidnapped if you ask the right kidney and the left lung. Everyone else thinks escapism. And that's it. Thank you. It's been so wonderful to read.
It's been wonderful to listen.
Yay.
It's been more wonderful to listen. Am I allowed to say that? I don't know. And so something that stuck out to me is still breathing, still. And breathing has been kind of a strange thing for me lately because I'm having trouble breathing lately. I'll tell you about it later. It's a whole story. But it's such an intimate thing that we do as people, as things, and we don't even think about it. And when we start to think about it, it gets even weirder because we're thinking about something we're not supposed to think about. And when I kind of thought about, again, that whole idea and how often we think about things we're not supposed to think about in general and how that impacts us and what it does to our minds, and we learn stuff from it. Sometimes we learn nothing from it. Feel like we're drowning, like you said. You learn nothing from drowning, and we're drowning in our breath, without our breath, and so on, and in our minds. And so very powerful stuff, Kimani. I'm glad you're here. And also, if you enjoyed some of that work, it is also available in Writing for Life, www.nervousghostpress.org. So thank you very much, Kimani. Glad you're here. Appreciate it. And before I introduce our next speaker, I want to remind everybody watching, everybody here in the chat with us, that we have a Q&A discussion at the end after the last speaker. And in our Q&A, you could ask questions. You can kind of get to see each other at a more person-to-person basis, artist to artist. And it's really fun to watch as the host. It's fun to witness everybody pick each other's minds and ask what makes us tick, what makes us move, where'd that line come from, why'd you write it, why didn't you write it, what's going on in your life, how do you navigate through virtual readings, because a lot of us, we want to be in person, we want to get the energy from the audience, we want to meet people, hear the gasps and all the clicks and all those things. And how do we do it when it's just a little dot in front of us? How does it change when we're speaking to ourselves, because we can see ourselves in the camera? How does it change versus when we're speaking to the universe, into the clouds, into the sky, and we let the words kind of trickle down and fall over our bodies? And that's probably one of my questions I'll ask. How do we write alone, but not by choice? And so thank you again. Our next speaker here is one of my friends from school, and I appreciate that they're able to be here. I think it's new work. I don't know if that adds any pressure, but I saw something earlier that said there was some new work coming. I don't know. Hopefully it is. And Sean, whenever you're ready, have at it.
Thanks, Matt. I love you. Just so much love. I'm a Oakland-based artist, and this is gonna be some poems based on from my. I wrote a zodiac chat book, and it covers like the zodiac signs and the planets, and it's just like a reinterpretation of the confidence of the language. Is what I was going for. And if someone in the Zoom chat could give me a planet, sun and moon included, and then I'll pick. I'll just okay. Someone said Mercury. Cool. I'll read Mercury. Mercury, how we think. Just because you are intelligent and organized does not mean that everything you do has to be labeled as secretary work. The general fear of phone calls hails back to the Greek myth of Hermes having to floss between Zeus's toes every time he hears thunder rumbling in the ever-present cover of clouds above Mount Olympus. To live on Mercury is to live within market and commerce, supply and demand, road rage, and roller skates. Breeze through the business formal valley of capitalism on winged boots and see how the market correlates to gender norms and vintage accessories. Much like the modern e-boy, Hermes is typically portrayed with several bits and pieces of ancient Apple products. In his left hand, he holds the well-known staff of Fiducius, a golden rod with two snakes constantly fighting for dominance. Temptation and denial, swag and cringe, quirky and bland. He holds these truths just to be a dick. The power to completely reverse the polarity and vibe check of a single individual. Wednesday is the opposite day for the same reasons. The one wakes the sleeping and drinks too much as the wake. In his right hand, Hermes holds a scroll of true wisdom and private screenshots of text threads between the gods. Now, because the scroll held by Hermes is similar to the one held by the Egyptian god Thoth, scribe and professional cosplayer, scientists are led to believe that ancient aliens managed to successfully graft parts of the god of Thoth to Hermes after he sustained several severe burns during an episode of Hot Ones with Sean Evans. The pivotal events gave new meaning to the term hot wings. This Hermes Mercury thought hybrid of symbolism and repeating patterns tie themselves to the stretch marks and the action of spreading oneself far too thin between far too many things. But the beauty of transitioning from 3D to 2D is the act of communicating new experiences and exchanging those said experiences for monetary goods. Capitalism exists within the act of setting fire to your older brother's collection of vintage Playboy magazines. Burn the supply to incite a desperate demand. Mercury is the symbol for communications, or rather your lack of communication. It knows when you should have said something and feeds off the shame of your moderate behavior. We have moved past the need to weigh souls during the transition to the afterlife. All Hermes has to do is go through your phone and heavily judge your social media platforms. We collect the data, we regurgitate the data, and we embody the data. To be damned by your own Twitter feed is to be human. Perfection and the divine are not common themes within the clove of coriander aromatherapy cycles. Mercury contains the multitudes your English teacher swears by: the deceiver, the trickster, the linebacker, and the secretary. Acknowledge what you do not know and what you hold yourself back from learning. Self-awareness is the key in Mercury, and Mercury is the key to radicalizing the unaware. I don't know if I could read one more. I don't know if I have time. Okay. Okay. So I just need another planet then, if that's all right. This is the audience participation. I don't have Earth. I'm sorry. It's not in the zodiac. Earth is Venus. Okay, Venus. Yeah, Earth isn't in the zodiac. Venus, how we love. No gender, only feelings. Embrace what toxic masculinity and conservative wish for you to suppress. Venus is the lens through which you experiencing everything this simulation has to offer. The frog of emotion caught in your throat and the prince that is born from confessing your true feelings. Not all of us are equipped to fully comprehend the intensity of stimuli we encounter from day to day. That is to say, we are all different and will not be bringing the same things to the classroom potluck. It is within these differences we bear witness to Venus dressed in all of their different skins. For all we know Aphrodite to be the firstborn with skin after emerging from a rejuvenating seaweed wrap and washing off the sea foam body milk from Sephora. To receive the gift of a skin is blessed, but the values of Venus go beyond the prison of flesh, bone, and Aphrodite's OnlyFans. Here we support sex work and the duality of desires. In the classic myth, we know the Prince of Troy chose Aphrodite over Helen of Santa Cruz, and then proceeded to build a wooden horse and go clubbing with some folks he met over Facebook Marketplace. However, scientists were able to translate a passage where Aphrodite asks the Prince of Troy if he will still love them and if they happen to be a worm. The uncovering of this ancient riddle led to a heated debate among scholars for decades to follow. Either you believe there to be no right answer, or you know what the right answer is. Fortunately, this riddle holds no serious punishments for those who answer wrong to the current subject, withholding the right answer from you. The crushingly poisonous atmosphere of Venus prefers to reject all binary options and explore the rose-shaped solar orbits of its own emotional detachment from your problems. Can passion thrive in a binary? Does Aphrodite regret limiting herself to skin? Would an adult appreciate the experience of birth more than a baby? Unfortunately, because of intergalactic laws and our lungs being limited to the salad dressing known as oxygen, we will have to answer these questions during our limited individual lifetimes. Venus has supplied us with the ingredients to make pizza, but we are the ones who decided what toppings represent sin and purity. For the position of Venus dictates what we value and how we wish to express our appreciation to inanimate objects and characters of children's cartoons. Recognize that nothing in the world is nailed to the floor and that the slightest change in tone can absolutely fuck with your vibes. The better you are at adapting to this change, the faster your the badder your spiritual ass becomes. How you come to terms with change is how others fall in love with you. And those are my poems.
Thank you, Sean. I always appreciate hearing your work. And I apologize. I was the one who said Earth. I didn't know Earth wasn't a zodiac. I thought it was just all planets. I'm exposing myself today and my lack of awareness of zodiacs. But you know, something that struck me is using zodiacs and fun and confidence and bringing it all together. Something so maybe not trivial as zodiacs, but something that doesn't seem like it could be used as the inspiration for a chapbook for all of these things, where you think of it more of as, at least I think of zodiacs as something that's just mine and mine of this day or this month or whatever. But to take it and then to go one step further and to bring in all these ideas, it was really cool. And if anybody's here, unfortunately, none of the viewers can see our chat going on in the Zoom, but ask your questions. Ask Sean all your questions. How did he come up with these ideas? what's your favorite zodiac? What's your zodiac and your zodiac, inspired poem? So make sure to have that. We're gonna have our Q&A coming up. Thank you, Sean, and really good to see you. All right, our next speaker is fantastic mind. And of course, all of them here are fantastic minds. But Michaela has a fantastic mind also. And I'm excited to hear what Michaela has. I haven't heard the writing yet. And so this is going to be a cool experience for everybody. We all kind of get to experience it together. And I hope I'm not making you feel any kind of pressure here before you hop on. But Michaela, I'm happy that you're here joining us. I'm happy that you're excited and you're ready to go. And so whenever you're ready, tell us who you are and bring us into your world.
No, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really excited to be here, and your poems are amazing. The first isn't an original. It's by Harry Baker, titled Paper People. But I think I'll read that poem first, and once I get into my original, I'll introduce myself. So this is Harry Baker's Paper People. I like people. I'd like some paper people. They'd be purple paper people. Maybe pop-up purple paper people. Proper pop-up purple paper people. How do you pop-up purple paper people? I hear you cry. Well, I'd probably pop-up purple paper people with a proper pop-up purple people paperclip. I'd prepare appropriate adhesives as alternatives. A cheeky pack of blue tack just in case the paper slipped. Because I could build a pop-up metropolis, but I wouldn't want to deal with all the paper people politics. Paper politicians with their paper thin policies, broken promises without appropriate apologies. There'd be a little paper me and a little paper you. And we could watch paper TV, and it could all be pay-per-view. We'd see the poppy paper wrappers rap about their paper package, or watch paper people carriers get stuck in paper traffic on the A4 paper. There'd be a paper Princess Kate, but we'd all stare at paper Pippa, and we'd all live in fear of killer Jack the Paper Ripper. Because the paper propaganda propagates that people's prejudices, because the paper propaganda propagates the people's prejudices. Papers printing pictures of the photogenic terrorists, a little paper me and a little paper you. And in a pop-up population, people's problems pop up too. There'd be a pompous paper parliament who remained out of touch and who ignored the people's protests about all the paper cuts. Then the peaceful paper protests would get blown to paper pieces by the confetti cannons manned by preemptive police. And yes, there'd still be paper money, so there'd still be paper greed, and the paper piggy bankers pocketing more than they need, purchasing the potpourri to pepper their paper properties. Others live in poverty and ain't acknowledged properly. A proper poor economy where so many are proper poor, but while their needs are ignored, the money goes to big wars. Origami armies unfold plans for paper planes, and we remain in prison in our own paper chains. But the greater shame is that it always seems to stay the same. What changes is who's in power, choosing how to lay the blame. They're naming names, forgetting these are names of people, because in the end, it all comes down to people. I like people. Because even when the situation's dire, it's only ever people who are able to inspire. And on paper, it's hard to see how we all cope. But in the bottom of Pandora's box, there's still hope. And I still hope because I believe in people. You see, people who have potential to be powerful. People have potential to be powerful. Just because the people in power tend to pretend to be victims, we don't need to succumb to that system. And a paper population is no different. There's a little paper me and a little paper you. And in a pop-up population, people's problems pop up too. But even if the whole world fell apart, then we'd still make it through because we're people. Whew. That was Harry Baker's Paper People, and thank you. My second poem is one I wrote during quarantine from a musician's perspective. And it was about like most of the people's changes and especially my own. So this is my piece called Interlude, and I hope you guys enjoy it. We used to have our hearts beat as one, the tempo of our symphony, Allegro. We'd rehearse and perform what we loved doing most. The places we went and the places we would go, all put on hold. Today we improvise the melody of our entity. We go at our own tempo, adagio. The elegy of our medley began to nourish, causing our forte to be at a halt. The start to our end, the beginning of our interlude. Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. And you know what? We like people too. And you know, even though it wasn't yours, I think it speaks just as powerfully as if you wrote it the way you read it. And I'd say I wouldn't even try to read it. Too many P's. Like too many P's, and I'll improperly say all the stupid P words, and I'll mess up. I'm a perfectionist. It's not going to work good. I'm going to sound stupid. And so that was really fun to listen to. And you know what? People inspire us, and all of you, all of the readers, all of the authors, everyone that I deal with in this industry, in this world, the artists, the musicians, the painters, the dancers, the philosophers, the physicists, all of them, you all inspire me to keep trying, keep working hard, to deal with all the craziness that we go through during, you know, the last 50 years and beyond. And it always seems like it's more crazy, but we get better. Like you wrote in the next one, you know, our heartbeats and the music and at our own tempos and our own speeds. And we can use music, we can use all the things that we love, right? Who says we can't do every single thing we love? We like cooking. Let's put cooking into our writing, into all of what we do. Let's put it into who we are in here, in our blood, in our mind, in our dreams. And so poetry inspires me. You inspire me. Everybody inspires me. Thank you, Michaela, for joining us. I appreciate you being here, and join us more. All right. Our next speaker and the final speaker we have before our Q&A, or before we kind of come together for a discussion, a few of them will share a little bit more work between us, and then we'll start discussing art. We'll start discussing where we are, how we survive in this world, how we integrate, move, transform, and reimagine everything that we're doing. This next speaker and I we've been chatting back and forth about stuff. Can't tell you what it is, I'm not gonna, but I'm curious as to how the genesis and the transitions and all of these things of the work is. I'm excited for it. And so Joanna, go ahead, hop on, say a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, where you're from, how it's going, and then take it away.
Hello, hello, hello. I am Joanna, a Nabob. People fuck that one up all the time. I'm Filipina and white. The white side has no claim over me because they're pretty racist. I know half of these fools up in here because we went to Mills and suffered together, and we all have loan debt together. Yay! And the stuff that, you know, our dear host was mentioning is about to really form the stuff I'm going to read. So I'm going to read a bit of an untitled poem. It's not finished. And then I will jump to the other ones. All right. The untitled one. The danger of the white male, Asian female trope is you become so accustomed to it, you normalize it. To such a degree, you fail to see when you are his emotional punching bag and box of tissues when he needs to wipe his tears or to soak up his cum. And you're utterly blinded to the fact that every great love of your life has made you this, the brownish yellow souvenir from a distant past, a thin, measly chapter easily glossed over, plastic bauble hula girl dancing soullessly, a meaningless moment in time, where you raised a loving man for someone else to cherish as their own. Thank you. I'm gonna move on to a trio that I wrote for a class. I believe Sean and Kamani have both read these, and now you get to hear them. So the first one is called Typical. Typical. A white person, when faced with a difficult choice, and despite everything he claims to disavow, chooses to embrace familiarity over something new, because that's all I am. Not even a thing, just a fleeting escape outside the confines he built for himself, a human island left in a distant haze of semen and revelries that truly meant nothing to him, a mere toy with a brain. What is the point of touching the body, the softness of one's cheeks, the colors of fading tattoos, the goosebumps of moist legs, the playfulness of fingers, the weightless air of sturdy throat, when the gaze tying it all together doesn't reflect the same image back to the beholder? Though I have been reduced to my kind's usual place, the silent, crestfallen, heartbroken dog eater, grieving a white man who claims he'll return for her, but likely won't. I cannot let go of the way I looked in your eyes reflected back to me, magnified, glowing, bright. And each time I try to convince myself it wasn't real, my longing for sea foam and silence intensifies because nothing else feels real. Perhaps the melodramatics and hyperbolic statements stems from centuries of this same dynamic repeating itself over and over again in my bloodline, but the only tangible tether I had cut himself out of my grasp. Thank you. The next one is called Nabob, used in the way it was initially produced, not the way some sports person used it. So Nabob. Sometimes I wish I could peel my skin off entirely, reveal the delicate white woman within me with rosy nipples and tiny lips, slender petite frame and bony hips, soft azure eyes and alabaster skin, so for once my anguish and tears may garner actual empathy. Maybe I'll be perceived as a person for more than my use value, beyond my abilities to enrich you, aiding in your developing wokeness, coloring you with my culture, seasoning your tongue with mine, vying to make colonialism real to you, making you comprehend oppressions outside of yourself, the supposed hero of the story, where I'm merely living for you as nothing more than a plot device crafted for your benefit, a collection of orifices to explore, a body to practice upon, a living wall from which ideas are bounced off of, a happy ending hiding in the margins, an oriental flair to add pop of color to your contrast. I mean, our love has ruined my perception of myself. I've grown tired of being the brown woman whose hue is mistaken for the strength of a horse, as if I'm an unfeeling thing, incapable of heartache, forced to focus on the labor of pouring myself into you rather than enriching myself, disregarding my dreams, hopes, just to grow yours, like all the other paying bedfellows before you. Perhaps my life would be easier if I could shed it all, choosing when I feel compelled to adorn myself in it, my brown, my tongue, my body, my clothes, my memories. I could be the rapscallion rogue who totters in and out of windows and lives as I please, running off into the night if need be, to escape the toxicity of the only love that adorns me, strip myself back down to a body, belly full of riches and splendor stolen from a woman who planted the seeds of nations within me, failing to realize I came to devour, not nurture, that I get to wax as she wanes into me, and can leave whenever without warning, stealing everything from her she invested in me, leaving her with nothing, not even a chamber pot, full of vomit. Alas, I, the wandering umber Pygmalion, must carry on, utterly depleted, while you continue to do what you like, turning your eyes away from me in my ruin. Thank you. The last one is also saucy. So it's called Intimacy. Sex becomes an easy transaction when you perfect the performance, choreograph the heart out of it, memorize the mundane mechanics, know exactly when to fall apart, appear like you're fully present while the mind drifts off to places these fools cannot begin to penetrate. A privacy of your own to cherish, that secret part of you you get to protect, fortify with gold and abalone walls, decorate with flourish and excess. Yet it shifts when you let somebody in, beyond the warmth and wet of you, letting them touch the inside parts you keep for yourself. You find your body bending to their fingertips, contorting your limbs with ease, working towards a common goal without a yearn for currency, or a desire for it to end, a chorus of waves breaking the bluffs, drenching everything it touches, and when it's finished, you're satisfied and ready for more, an addiction you can gratify seemingly without harm. So you lay in the glow of the witching hour within the web of tangled legs, the salt of drying spit and cum, sheets and rags in disarray. You teach him new ways to move his tongue over and under words you've carried your entire life, watching the shape of his lips wiggle, his mouth form the language you love, your ears drinking this nectar greedily, because for so long it's been denied this. You have been denied this. And for a few fleeting moments, your walls are lowered, allowing this to cross-pollinate within you, causing new growth to bloom as wildly and freely as you used to be. A tiger cub hunting in the bog, crouching low among the moss, blanketed by loving fog. You relish the ways he says your language, vying to give him more of it, letting him get deeper and deeper beneath your skin with each syllable and enunciation, burying further into your bones until you finally crack and arch your back, losing yourself to him, needing him, relying on the tip of his tongue, refusing to come up for air. He cradles you with your words, wraps them tightly around your body, inspires them to spring forth from your forehead so picturesque and godly, they in turn become part of him too. But this, more than anything else, will be the reason the void he leaves you with will never be filled. Because for a few fleeting seconds, everyone and everything you loved came back, with the sound of his voice molding the ash and rib into life. And when it's gone, your entire world ceases to exist again, a jet black speck no one recalls except for you, alone again in your thoughts. So you vie for the days in which sex was nothing more than an easy transaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. That's what's up. One thing I wanted to share first is, a lot of us knew each other from, or not a lot of us, some of us, and then we stayed in touch still after, what year is it, 2020, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it was. And the most important part beyond the writing, the poetry, the arts, the connection, the education, all of it was the emotional maturity, the growth that we had, the passion. You could hear the passion in your voice. You can hear the passion when we all come together and we speak with each other about things that hurt us or hurt somebody else, and yet we come from different worlds and are united in what's born from in here. And then we manipulate it with our brains into something powerful, into something beautiful, into something stronger that we can control, that we can make ours, and we can reclaim whatever trauma it was, and we can make it saucy. Absolutely saucy. That's what's up. And some things I have here is a toy with a brain and know when to fall apart and peel off our skin. Those are some quotes that stood out to me as far as who am I as a person. When I peel off, when I get rid of all these things, when I get rid of my brain, I become a toy, maybe. When I'm just a toy and I put a brain back in me, what's left? And what's here when we don't feel like there's anything left? And so, Joanna, thank you, making me think. And I like thinking. I sometimes like thinking. And so thank you very much. All right, now, everybody, I want to remind you all before our Q&A is to stay connected with us. Of course, our social medias are on screen now, and I like doing that little thing. That's what I wanted to show you again. It took me an embarrassingly amount of hours to get that done, but I like it. And email us if you are interested in joining the conversation at any point. Email us, and I'll pencil you in for the next week, for the next month, whenever we have it. Our next, just very quickly before I move on here, our next open mic is October 16th at 6 o'clock Pacific. And then also we'll have a special showing the Saturday before Halloween for a cool Halloween costume party. And so now let me move some things around here so we could have our Q&A discussion. And our Q&A discussion, for those listening, is all about a back and forth between all of us. And so we're all here on the screen, and I'll pop up in a little bit. We're all here, and I'm going to add myself in a little bit, so don't worry about it. But our Q&A discussions are such a great aspect that we have with our open mics here, because we get to talk artist to artist instead of interview to artist where they ask some manufactured question and you get some robotic response. We get to ask the real and really dive deep and rip apart all these things. And while I set up my camera over here, I want to pose the first question to everybody. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, throw some questions out, and we'll get them asked here. So my first question is, when you're writing something that hurts, or when you're writing something that comes from something maybe 20 years ago, however many years ago, how do you write it in a way that you then can speak it with strength and with confidence, like Sean brought up? How can you take something that made us feel vulnerable, and then now it becomes something with power, and we resonate that power with our voice? So that's our first question. Anybody can jump in at any point.
I think it's the only way that I can talk about it ultimately, because I feel like if I don't write about it, no one's probably gonna know. Like, it will probably just remain something that I will like never speak about. But if I write about it, it gets me to a point where I'm ready to let it go and like ready to like process it and those types of things. So I think I wouldn't be able to talk about hard things if I didn't write about them first.
Very nice. All right, hold on. Before I have to do something. Hold on. I'm learning. I need to remove myself from here first, and then put myself in the other screen. Process. We're learning together. That's what it's all about. Okay, now we're all back. Okay, continue. Sorry about that.
Oh my gosh, I love technology. No, I was gonna say another part of it for me is time. Because sometimes you don't have the language to say what you want to say in the moment until much later. And a part of it for me as well is not being given the space to say what I wanted to say the first time. And then saying, fuck that, I'm gonna write this shit into existence in my poetry. So, like, everything I just read is shit that I really wanted to say to someone and never got to. So, gave myself the room to talk about that.
Absolutely. Kind of like right now, say, hey, it's my time now, and I'm gonna say it. You're gonna listen, or you're not gonna listen. What's coming out of this? It's coming out of here right in this moment, no matter what. All right. Thank you, Joanna. Appreciate it.
I was thinking about this, and the poem "Why Not to Write" kind of touches upon this. In my experience, it's, you're feeling the sharp pain, but once you start writing, it just becomes a throbbing ache. So I don't know if we're ever healed from trauma. I don't know if the pain ever goes away, but there's something about the writing process is that once it's out on paper, it's not only real to you, it's real to others who can relate. And there's something therapeutic about putting your story on paper. And the other thing that works for me is thinking in images and metaphors. So if I can create a metaphor for the pain, an image that captures what I feel, then that's a great starting point for me to go on.
Absolutely. I think the therapeutic aspect of writing and of art in general is something that is so cool. And when I talk to my students about writing on the paper, and we're making arguments and all these narrative things and essays, is how do we argue with other people when we're the only voice on the page? How strong and confident does our voice have to be so I can say something and you're already done? You haven't even thought of a response yet, and your response is already murdered and manipulated and torn apart. And in our poetry, when it's therapy and we're therapizing ourselves, I don't know, whatever the word is, right? We're doing it to ourselves. How strong does our voice have to be in order to not only be the voice that shares, the voice that listens, and then the voice that advises? And I think artists were able to do that. And all of you obviously were able to do that because you did today. And whether it's painting or music, we're not just the painter, we're the canvas, we're the eyes, we're the art critic. And if we're a physicist or a doctor or whatever it is, a math person, the numbers, we're not just the calculator, we're the solution and the equation and the problem and everything in between. We're all the variables, and none of the variables all combined together. And so, thank you, Mary. That was a cool thing you brought up. Amanda, go ahead.
Writing about the hard stuff is usually writing about some kind of trauma And as my body and mind processes trauma, I carry that version of myself at that particular age with me everywhere I go. What happened to me at 8 or 9, I'm still holding her hand and I'm still guiding her through the world. And part of the responsibility as I am now 26 is to speak for her, because she didn't have the language or the platform to articulate what was happening to her. And so I offer myself now as 26 to listen to her and to speak for her on behalf of her with her permission when she wasn't able to and when adults around her failed her. And I think that's the nature of writing about trauma, is because when trauma happens, somebody around you failed you. And I think part of writing poetry of that time is speaking to that and saying, you failed me, but this is how I'm going on anyway. And that's kind of how my writing process is anyway.
Definitely. Thank you, Amanda. So we got a question from Joshua here, and it's directed at Joanna and Sean, but I want to expand it further. And so it's kind of a two-parter. And so anybody, for all of you, are you working on new material, but also not just only are you, but how do you approach new material? Because I know a lot of us have written thousands, maybe hundreds of pages of poetry, of stories, of notes, of crumpled up papers or napkins. I have all my notes. I have a giant stack of napkins over there. I gotta start using paper maybe. And how do you approach it from the voice, as Amanda was speaking about, the voices that we have now in whatever age we are from our past? How do you take that new voice and kind of, do you grow? Do you look back at what you wrote and you're like, ugh, who was I? Or do you know it? Do you see it as like an evolution, as a transformation? And after that question, I'll ask the next one. You want me to go first? I can go first. I forgot the question. Anyway, so when I write new work, and I haven't been writing as much as I normally do. There was a time when I think 2019-ish, I didn't write for almost a year and a half, almost 2 years. I was afraid of what would come out. And I think for many of us, a lot of times when we access these places of not just our brains, but in here, of our bodies, of wherever it exists in us and on us, we're afraid sometimes, how far will our body take us? How far will the pen guide us? Because even though we're the ones who write it, sometimes in that moment, it just kind of happens. I'm like, and then you think to yourself, holy jeebus, I did not know I was going to go there. And sometimes when I'm writing new work, I could be either inspired by something I see on TV, all the hate everywhere in the world. A friend says something stupid. Maybe I said something stupid. Maybe a student says something cool. And I'll put a little note somewhere. And this is kind of my process. Is I'll just write it, whatever pops in my head, I'll write it down. I don't try to force myself anymore, because when I force myself, it comes out dumb and silly. And it's not genuine. And when it's genuine, I feel okay about it. And as far as I'm concerned, if I feel okay about it, I don't care what anybody else thinks, right? Because my voice is mine, and that's it. But accessing all of those places, I spoke with a professor of mine after a tragedy, and she said that, we, the ones who go to these places, and Mary, we go, how far, how deep do we go despite how much it hurts? We do it all the time. We find us at 5 years old and we write about it. We go back and we access those memories. We re-become, we time travel. I think artists are time travelers. And we put ourselves back in that moment because now we can't. And so then when we get into situations, and a lot of us, especially over, the recent years and months, we find ourselves in these situations that we don't want to be in, that they're kind of scary at times, make us feel vulnerable, but it's what we do. And so when I approach new stuff, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to do it now. Maybe I'll go lift some heavy things and throw it on the ground again. But I remind myself, oh, that's what I do. I pick up my pen, maybe some tea, maybe some tea, and I get started.
I'll go. I mean, you kind of opened the door. I think my process for the past few years has been the notes section in my phone. Everything that came to mind, I wrote it down there until I got smart and I started an Instagram page called Empty Musings, where I just kind of unload these thoughts. And some of them later become longer poems, and some of them just remain musings. And so that's been very like on the spot. I also noticed that immediate feedback from people kind of pumps you up and inspires you to write more or guides you in a certain direction. So that's something I've been doing in the past year that's been working for me. Um, this was supposed to be a love collection. So I have a darker collection that I'm working on, not as actively as I should be, but it deals with the darker side of love, abuse, domestic violence, trauma. And needless to say, it's a difficult work to approach, even to compile the pieces, because each time you read it, you're reliving it and you want to do justice to it. So to distract myself, I wrote another children's book. So I have two children's books that I wrote for my kids. The third one is dedicated to my younger one because she's like, Mama, where's my book? So I'm like, okay, I need to do that. But these are kind of things I do on the side until I get to the serious stuff. And it's hard. It's hard because you are making yourself vulnerable. You are putting yourself in a position where, in order to be authentic, you have to relive some of the ugliness. But that's the only way to be authentic. So I think as writers, we are very brave in that we do put ourselves in vulnerable positions all the time. We say the things nobody wants to say, and we don't care how it's going to be perceived. But hopefully, we can reach out to people who can't voice these, traumas or the pain, because it's hard to put words to the pain. I'm going to shut up now.
I think that was really, really good. Like that was such a great answer. But when you said Instagram, I was like, oh, it like reminded me of how my process is kind of what it's like turned into at this point. Because my main like project is not new. It just requires a lot of study. So I have to focus a lot on research and like a lot of kind of boring theological research and like Jesus had a brother. Do we know this? Like all this random stuff, like a lot. Yeah. His name was like stupid and very close to Jesus. So like it was very similar. Anyway, so anyways, since that's like what I end up getting like rabbit holed into, I forget that I should also still just be writing. So I do this thing on Instagram a lot where I will just like post a question and be like, yo, give me a word. Literally any word, literally. And I will make a poem out of this word right here, like right now. And it helps a lot. And I end up using these pieces, and like part of a couple of those pieces turned into one of the poems that I read tonight. Like it helps a lot to like break up the research heavy part of where my writing is right
now. For me, so I am working on, I guess, what I hope will be the next book, if I am so lucky enough to be published for another book. That project is like my autobiography and tarot cards. So each poem is a tarot card. And there's 2 poems per tarot card, one being kind of, there's always 2 sides to every card if you're familiar with the tarot deck. But to answer the question of how to approach material when we know it might hurt us, in the scope of a full project, you have to kind of break up the heavy pieces with lighter material, because for me, I was noticing while I was writing this, I was like, God, so much of my material is dark. And I'm like, my whole life isn't darkness, right? And it's like the death card in the tarot card is not all darkness. People think of death as like, oh, it's the end. That's so sad. But when something dies, something new can be born. So there is this positive side to the death card in the tarot deck. So for me, approaching this project is like, there are some good things that have happened to you, you know, and there are, you know, you have to approach it with like, there is a sense of, you have to balance out your project in some ways. If it's all skewed in one direction, it can become hard to keep up with, because you're like, yeah, I know. After a couple poems, you're like, yeah, I know. So you have to kind of break up the material in some ways, but also kind of think more in a well-rounded way. It's like there's these multi dimensions to any kind of feeling that you have. There's always, you know, the saying that there's more than one side to the story. So kind of trying to approach it from different angles is also very helpful. When it's like, this hurts, when you're writing a poem about hurt, you know, and you really lean into that. I mean, I think you have to, you owe it to yourself. That thing fucking hurt. You are allowed to feel anger. I think as a woman, we're often told that we're not allowed to feel anger. And I think poetry is one of those few places where you can be like, this fucking sucked, and I'm gonna let you know. As you know, Joanna and Matt were saying earlier, they were like, this is my truth and you're gonna know. And I think that's fucking great. So that's kind of how I approach things.
Awesome. Thank you. I just realized that when I'm not talking but my microphone is on, I'm typing down here, and I'm like, oh no, and I thought of everything except for the stupid clickety clack of the damn keyboards. That's all right. So a few questions, and I super agree with everybody about distracting ourselves every once in a while. I learned from one of my professors at one point about horror movies, and sometimes you're like, you're getting all, you know, shook up, you're like this, and then they say something funny. You're like, oh, okay, I can relax. Because we're so, especially in 2021, we are constantly, the minute we wake up, we're already late, we already forgot something, we already have to do something else, we have to set up all these things, we're already up in our shoulders and our necks, and when do we just get to just relax, breathe out, stop breathing in, you know, it goes both ways, just breathe out every once in a while. So even in our writing, even in our poetry collections, even in our emotions, to just distract ourselves with something funny, something silly, perhaps. And so the other question, just very quickly, and maybe this can move into a few, but do any of you, how do you approach collaborations? And are you looking toward collaborations? Because we know a lot of us, even on this screen, come from different worlds. And if somebody is writing from maybe one perspective and someone else reads it and they're like, ugh, I don't like where we're going with this. How do you have that conversation when art is the focus?
I will have an answer for that one day when someone actually tries it with me, because no one has ever tried. On the one hand, the person that I directed all those motherfucking poems at did try to collaborate with me. And the thing I found with my writing versus theirs is the fact you can tell which one of us actually has gone to many a protest and which one fantasizes about going. Like, I've been doing this shit since 2008, baby, and I can tell in your writing that we're not going to hit the same metaphors and same level of intensity. And yeah, no one has ever come at my work and tried to tell me what to do, how to do it, and change it. I am very particular, I'm very exacting, and I also know that I have to make my own space as somebody who is both mixed race and somebody who doesn't fit any of the stereotypes of a Filipina. So if anyone has ever tried it with me, they're shot down real quickly. Like, yes, I am loud. No, I'm not a nurse. Yes, I have an accent. Right now I'm hiding it. Fuck you. So maybe one day one of my dear close friends like Kamani Rose will hit me up for a collab, and it'll be saucy and full of Libra stuff. But for now, yeah, I occupy a space in which it's mine and no one else is coming in.
What about a Sean and Joanna and Kimani collaboration?
That would be a lot of edibles.
There's a phone that works in more than one direction, Miss Ma'am.
Edibles and sass would occur with all three.
A big ol' mess.
All right, so
Sean,
now that our distraction is over, Sean. No, Sean. So, Sean, are you thinking of collaborating with anybody?
Not at the moment. I had not considered it. I have collabed. In college, I was part of the slam poetry team. We went to competitions and stuff, and I did collab with other people, team pieces. And I don't know, collabing is fun. If people wanted to collab, I would really want to focus on what we wanted to say. I think that's really important. And yeah, that's not really an answer. I'm gonna leave it at that. No, I'm willing to collab.
You heard it. You got to collab now. Hold on. I'm working in the chat at the same time. I got too many things going on. I'm so confused over here. If I fall asleep, you'll know I just got too confused. And so, thank you. And I think, collaborations are tough because, like Joanna said, sometimes we try and speak about things. Maybe we're imagining something, or somebody knows a little more, and we're trying to figure out, where do we go? Where do we come from? Maybe we have to, find Cotton Eye Joe someplace and really, dig deep and find the answers, because really that's the only one that has the answers. But one thing about collaborations that I've tried, and I think the last time I collaborated successfully was in high school with one of my friends, and we wrote a poem about a rabbit. And that's it. I don't remember the rest. It was about a rabbit. But a couple questions that kind of go together from YouTube and from my phone they're similar. So when we're thinking about these emotions or writing about something where we know, maybe our close friends or family, people that we know who we're writing about. I've written about people before, and we know they're going to read it and then go, hold on there a little second, buddy. But we do it anyway. But it's a little bit scary when we go back into that time where we were younger and we hadn't yet become the image of when we were younger, who we thought we had to be. And we hadn't become that person to protect us in those days. And when we're so afraid, how do we move past that fear? Where does it go? And along, kind of related to that question, is while we do it, because we do it, I think that's pretty apparent, does it get easier? Each poem, each piece, each issue, each subject matter.
I think it gets easier. It does after you do it a certain number of times. I think it gets easier. I saw this quote when I was like 12, and it really resonated. And it was like, if they didn't want you to write about them, they should have treated you better. And I took that when I was in middle school and ran with it. And I was like, you're absolutely right, period. So fuck you, that's your own fault. And then I evolved into the thinking of, and I've told my family this, I'm like, listen, because we're all like artistic in some way or another. So we're all like low-key shading each other in our artwork all the time. And I'm like, I am never claiming to be a perfect person, but if you want to out yourself as the asshole in this situation, that's on you. Like, I didn't name names, but if you want to be like, why didn't you write this poem? Like, because I've had people, like my family members and stuff, like be in my Instagram comments, like, why would you write about your family this way? And I was like, well, I didn't say who it was about, but congratulations, you just outed yourself on the internet for being a dick. Like, good job. So I think that's part of what makes it easier, is that like you understand that you're writing from your own position, and if they want to make themselves known as the other person in the art, that's on them. And like, does anybody really, it's like, I think of like Taylor Swift as an example. Like, nobody wants to like come out on the other end and be like, yeah, she wrote that shit about me, my bad. And like like nobody wants to do that. Like, Jake Gyllenhaal is shaking in his boots. Like, it's not something that people want to own up to. So I'm like, that's fine. If you want to, it's just like a little bit annoying if they try to claim like happy ones, because I'm like, no. Then I have to be like, no, that wasn't about you actually. But if they want to claim bad ones, I guess it's on them.
Exactly. I mean, I recently wrote a poem about an interesting time between me and my best friend's mom. And she was like, "You can't say that." And I was like, "Listen, if you have issues with how you're portrayed, you shouldn't have acted like that. And if you have issues with that, that's between you and God, honey. I'm not a Christian woman, but I know you are."
Yeah, I feel that. And just before anyone else, thinks of something cool to say, I know that I was afraid for like, into my 20s and then beyond my 20s into my old age where I am now. And when I thought about, and I share with my students my first ever poetry show, I was, doing this, my bones were shaking, my blood was shaking, it was, there was like bubbles or something. It was horrible. I couldn't control my feet. I don't know why my feet were doing things. I had a finger and I was pointing at the microphone. I don't know why I was pointing at the microphone. And I'm pretty sure there were tears at some point. But I walked away from it. It was horrible, but I felt better. And then I kind of got this, not a hunger for it, but I'm like, oh, I want to try it again. Because it was, it gets to be so exciting, even if it's a negative excitement, it's still so exciting. I'm like, oh, I want that feeling. And now, while I'm here and I'm being the host, I'm still, everything is shaking on the inside. But now maybe it's on the inside, maybe it's a little more mental. And it's not so much this, but I have a pen. I don't stop. I can't. I usually put it in my ear, and this is kind of bugging me today because I got these stupid things on because the way the audio had to, work out. But as long as when I think of the scary stuff or the thing that I think is behind me, it's behind me. And whatever I do, as long as it's back there, I know that I'm going in some way forward, whether it's sideways, but as long as I'm not going back to where that place was. That was a horrible place, and I hate it. And it makes me angry. And when people speak about all that, toxic stuff, I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Not a clue. And that's how, and I think, like Kimani said, it does get a little easier. It gets a little bit more comfortable because we're used to it now. The very first time it was new. We didn't know the streets. We didn't know when to turn, what the lights were, how the road worked, whatever it was. And now we're familiar with the streets. Now we lived in the streets. We are the streets. We're from the streets. And when we get there, it's not so much we're approaching this scary thing that we're doing. We're coming back home. But we're coming back home after we went to college, after we went across the world, we traveled. We're coming back home with a seasoned mind and a seasoned emotional skeleton. And so when we get there, we're like, nightmares? Come on. Throw something better at me. Come on, world. You think I'm still that? Please. And so there's a question in the YouTube box, unless anybody has anything else for the previous question. 2. All right, cool. Go ahead. I'm going to shut up.
Oh, I was going to say, I mean, one of the beauties is that we're writing poetry. We're not writing autobiographies or, it's a fictionalized form of art, and then there's metaphor to disguise. You can change up pronouns, but like you said, own up. Like whoever thinks it's about them, like own up. But one thing I wrote in my book, because this is like a saucy collection of some sort, and like people are going to ask me if some of this is real and true. So I had an answer before they even asked me, and I said, what is poetry but waves of emotions in an ocean of imagination? So really, how much of it is real and how much of it is fictionalized, and who's to be the judge? So screw them.
I think for me, I mean, clearly, as someone who's been to a lot of therapy, the more you talk about something, the less it stings. When you originally talk about something terrible that happened, you cry and it burns and it stings. And it's like, it's hard to talk about at first without crying. And then the more times that you tell your story, the more removed from it you get in a way. And the more you can articulate it at the same time. because you are sort of more removed, so you can kind of view it in a more full way than how you're experiencing it in that exact time.
I did want to answer this question that we're discussing. The in between of um like not being able to express and learning to like drive the streets and become the streets. I have not opened up yet with poetry, and I haven't been able to confront like what I've wanted to write. But I think now I am able to take that step of I'm not afraid of what I write about thinks about me. If I'm writing about someone, letting out my frustrations, I don't think I'm at the point where I'm afraid anymore because I'm alone in my dorm. I'm in college going through this process, and I think I'm losing my train of thought. I think I'm taking a lot of those steps forward that will allow me to open up with poetry and art and music, songwriting, whatever I decide to choose to express those emotions. I think now I feel so much more free to just write what I feel and not worry about what other people think as much.
Hell yeah. Who cares? My paper. I put my name on it. It's not your name on it. Now, if it's a collaboration, it might be a little bit different because there's 2 names on it. And in Shauna, Kimani, and Joanna's kid, it might be 3 names on it. But as far as my writing, it's only my name. And the only person that's got to worry about it is me. And maybe, I don't know, somebody, I'm sure. I probably care about a few responses. But for the most part, hell no. And one more question, and then we have a few more poems to share. Because why do we got to stop when it's poem time? Every time it's poem time. And so there's a question, the last question, or so far on YouTube is, Patricia Smith has talked about sitting down to write and visualizing 800 other poems going to write about the same topic. How do you work to keep your voice unique with so many other voices in the world? How do you stay unique?
I have to be honest, I'm not super sure I am the most unique. It would be really ballsy. It'd be so ballsy in the age of the internet to be like, I'm so unique, when you're exposed to so much content and so many voices every day and you're reading stuff. It's hard to not internalize that stuff and not have it influence your work. So I think it would be really ballsy of me to say like I'm the most unique, like that my voice is 100% my own, because arguably it's not. Like I went through college and I've read X amount of writers and poets, and I've been to all of these open mics and I'm writing stuff down, I'm writing lines as you're reading, and that's the thing about art, is that it's a small part in some way is always an act of collaboration. Writing, I had a professor that said writing doesn't exist in a vacuum. And I think that's true when you think about your voice, is it's always influenced by something or someone or multiple someones. And each poem kind of is in its own way. So I would be stressed to point to myself and be like, yeah, I'm unique, because I'm ultimately a product of however long poetry has been in the world and just how much content there is out there.
In our chat here in YouTube, or not YouTube, in Zoom, we have the rawness of the emotion and anxiety as our influence. And the rawness of the emotion, because yes, we all feel emotions, but we don't all feel emotions in the same way. Or my most sad, my most angry may not be the same situation, but to someone else in their emotional sphere is their most sad and their most angry. And it's up to us, I think, and kind of going off what Amanda said also, and maybe some of you will agree or disagree. Disagree, that's so cool. I like when people disagree. I say a lot of dumb things, if you know me, right? Sean and everything. Yeah, I say a lot of dumb things all the time. But, if we're honest and we know that our words are coming from here and are coming from our experiences, are coming from our brains, and it's our voice. And I tell my students every single day that then they hate me for it, I'm sure. It's their paper, it's their voice, 100%. They're not writing a paper for anybody else. They're writing the paper they want. We're writing the poem we want to write, not the poem we want someone to hear or to read. And I think if we approach things in that way, it stays genuine, it stays unique, because all of us come to the table, come to our cool little Zoom screen or the stage with our own unique experiences. It's because we know people who came from the same town, the same home, the same family, the same community, culture, and so on, and are entirely different people. Because how everything hits us, it affects us differently, and we look at things differently. And I think it's super cool that we're allowed to do it. And we can do it here. You know? And like Amanda said, I got a bunch of notes, if you can tell. It's kind of cool. I got my red pen. The students disdain the dreaded red pen.
Red pen always gave me anxiety, so I had a professor. This is back in high school, but for everybody, she wrote her notes in purple pen because it was less aggressive.
Yeah, my mentor in college said, "You will pry this red pen out of my dead hands," and I really took that to heart. And I said, "You'll pry this red pen out of my dead hands." Go ahead, Joanna.
Oh my gosh, I'm raising my hand. Anyways, in reference to the question before this pen conversation, which by the way, spice it up, my friends. You know, when it comes to grading, have a variety of colors to spell out their doom. I have gold, I have all these things, but yeah. So as a Filipino American poet who's first generation and in the diaspora, all of those, you know, isms and things, something I keep in mind with my uniqueness is the fact that even if I'm not unique, it still resonates with others. Asian American literature and Asian diaspora literature in general, the canon is growing so quickly that there's a lot of space for us, both in the same instance, we're making the space as we go along. So something that I keep in mind is like for every Barbara Jane Reyes, for every like Jessica Terahata H-Storm, for every even Ruby Ibarra, the rapper that like I love and I'm kind of like okay with, like I talk to her sometimes. The thing I keep in mind is like for every person who's on that level with them, there's a bunch of others who are not yet or who may never meet that level. And yeah, I think that if something like hits and becomes super popular, that's awesome. But even if it doesn't, it's still out there, it's still existing, it's still thriving, still surviving. And that's kind of why I don't really have this anxiety of influence per se, because again, the canon that I'm technically part of, most people don't even read, right? If I ask you what's your favorite Filipino American author or poet, one of y'all for sure will tell me Carlos Bulosan and stop there. Which is like what an old advisor used to do. She'd be like, here's Carlos Bulosan. And I'm like, I already got all his books, friend. I got books of his that are not even published anymore. Thank you for that. But yeah, it just really depends.
I made a typo in our chat box. So I'm trying to chat and type at the same time. So embarrassing. Thank you, Joanna. There's also a question I kind of want to expand on from YouTube to everybody, as far as what's your not your favorite poem maybe, but the favorite moment perhaps that you wrote about. And it doesn't necessarily mean a positive moment. Just the favorite moment that you always write about in every poem. There's always a hint or a person or somebody. There was a musician that I liked in middle school and high school, and in one of the comments it was, I keep lying to myself and saying that every song is not about you. And is every poem about somebody or an experience or a moment or a memory? And mine is Baby Matt when I was younger, almost always, because, I mean, I can kick his ass now, right? I'm like, come on, try something, Baby Matt. See what's up. I don't care how you're 5 years old. I'll kick your ass all day. And yet I still lose. And it's so strange. But that would be my favorite, maybe my most loving time and most hating time. It's all kind of, super amoebic, if I can make up a word. I don't know if that's a real word. I wrote it in an essay once. I didn't do too well because they said it wasn't a real word. But I'm sticking with it. But yeah, what's your your go-to, or something that's always behind you?
Uh, I'll answer that. So when I first started college, there was I'm thinking more of like a favorite poetry moment, if that's all right. I don't know. I'm just kind of interpreting the question in that way. Um, oh, I'm looking at the chat. I'm so sorry. Um, but in college, my first year, I took a poetry class, and they really encouraged us. The teacher really encouraged us to go to this pub. This was in Oregon. I went Ashland, Oregon, to go to a pub where there's a poetry competition, the Rogue Poetry Slam. So it's like slam poetry and stuff. And so I would go there and I'd actually compete there. There was a poem that I did one time that was like just really simply about camping. But like I had the whole bar laughing, and I think that was just like that's like a really precious poetry moment um, that I like to think back on. Yeah, that's my answer. It's my favorite.
I think I have a good poetry moment. It kind of relates to what you said, Matthew, about like the nerves and stuff. Because after my very first time, like doing any kind of reading or performing, first of all, I blacked out the whole performance. It was really terrible. I remembered none of it. All of my friends were like, "You did so good! Oh my god!" And I'm like, I remember getting up from my seat to walk onto the stage, and then I literally walked off of the stage to the bathroom and immediately threw up. And I was like, "Cool." Great. And then my friends were like, are you good? And I'm like, yep, I'm fine. And then I literally just came back and sat down like nothing. And they're like, you that's a reaction to have. And I'm like, yep, because I was just terrified. And there's been times that I've like bawled my eyes out like while reading, and I was like mortified, and everyone was like, that was the most powerful thing I've ever seen. And I was like, I was sobbing on stage. That was too much. Like we all need to pull it back. And I think what kills that kind of thing and what makes most of my poetry moments like my favorites is because I just allow my personality to just be. So if I start crying, I start crying. If I make jokes, I make jokes. If I mess up and change the whole poem, I mess up and change the whole poem. It's a new poem now. Like we're switching it up. Like I had to learn how to let myself just be. And that made things a lot easier, and then makes every single time that I read completely different and my like favorite poetry reading, because I didn't do anything. Even if I read the same thing as I did last time, it's not the same.
So mine is centered around the same poem. Every time I read this really long poem called Dear Dear Scarjo and that shitty futuristic Bob, which is like a solid 7 pages long, goes through every single Asian American trope you can think of and just rips it to fucking shreds. And it's again centered around Black Widow's stupid ass. I just love like how long that poem is and how the reaction every time I have read it is the same. It keeps me happy. It keeps me full of joy because we got people laughing, we got people groaning, we got people recognizing the characters I'm like calling out indirectly. We have people hating on Scarlett Johansson with me, which is always a great bonding moment with an audience. And that reaction is something that keeps me fueled as I write stuff. Like, sure, I write stuff about like turning my rape into a poem about how America imperializes the Philippines, or I have ones roasting that person that I read about earlier. But for sure, I think that in terms of like more memorable poetic moments, definitely like the ability to make people laugh even though I'm being really serious. Like the way media represents Asian Americans is really fucked up, but I got your ass laughing, so it'll stick in your little head. Hooray.
I guess.
Yeah, I feel that. Go ahead, Amanda.
Nah. I guess top poetry moments. I mean, I guess the first time I was published was with my community college literary magazine. and like my family was there, and I'm like exposing my soul because that's what you do in poetry. You're always about 50 shades too honest. And then like your parents are there, and I'm like, okay, well, now you know this about me. But they were still like so proud, and the whole time I remember my dad, who's like this like so intellectual like math and science guy. He was like, even I've never been published, and he was just like so stunned that I've done something that he's never done. Like, he was just like, what? That's so impossible. He didn't mean it in a mean way, but I guess it was just like, whoa, my child has like done something different than I have, and you just like never imagined that for me. And honestly, I didn't imagine it for me either. At the time I was 16, I was a high schooler, like doing the rest of my high school in community college, and it was just like a different kind of route than the rest of my siblings took. And my dad was just like, holy shit, you're your own person. And I guess it was just like this coming of age moment, which was really cool. But yeah, and I mean, also the forthcoming book coming this March, so that was also a cool moment. I was like, holy shit, someone believes enough in my book that they want to publish it and like have other people read it and put it for sale. What? That they believe it to like, win a prize. I guess that's also a top poetry moment. I mean, it has to be. It's the first book I've ever put out, and for a press to believe in it as much as Nervous Ghost does, I mean, it's just fucking wild. I'm like, you mean me? It's just like, I guess that's kind of the weight of publication for I think a lot of poets when the first round of it is like, you mean me? Because poetry can be so intimate, and it's such an exposure in a way that I think is different than a novel. The storytelling element, I think perhaps there's more degrees of separation from, whereas poetry is like, this is how I'm feeling, and it can feel perhaps a bit more raw, but that might be a biased opinion. I would have to talk to someone who writes prose on that one, but those would be my top, like, holy shit, I might actually be a poet moments.
Amanda, all you got to do is write a novel. You can talk about whatever you want. Who can tell you otherwise? He says, I wrote my novel already. It's about 2 characters, and they're cooler than you are, bro.
That's it. I just got to write a novel. That's all I got to do.
All right, so without any questions, what we're going to do now, we have a couple extra poems, some encore poems, which are exciting because encores are always cool. If we had an audience, and I'm sure everybody at home is like, more poems, more poems. And so I know there's a few of you that want to share more. I'm not going to call on you. And I said I was going to introduce it. This is that introduction. Hate me, be awkward, and I'm going to mute myself, and I'm just going to enjoy the show.
I guess I'll go. As my encore poem, I have Tender Rose Quartz. And I guess this goes into my personal philosophy that everybody is poetry and every body is poetry. So, Tender Rose Quartz. You introduced me to the softest parts of myself, the parts that flood and spill over your fingers, down your torso, your thighs, leave wet spots on the floor. I can make something sweet that you want to lap up. Pull at your hair, handlebars of pleasure. Sex with you is dangerously close to making love, fuck buddy. You visit me after work. I fantasize that it's a quick fuck in a corporate closet on your lunch break, that I'm ruining a company man. You stay for hours, pleasuring me apart. How is being railed into the mattress the gentlest thing someone has ever done to me? The delicacy of your erection, the shy way your sex sax giggles for release as you try not to come. I tell you it's okay. I want the intimacy of something so inside you to be so inside me. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm gonna go because mine kind of follows the same kind of train of thought. This is Where the Sea Meets the Sand. I'll meet you there where the sea meets the sand, where lightning and clouds collide, where sunsets emblazon the sky, where seagulls sing a lullaby and the stars glow in the dark. Tell me how the moon floods the beach at night. Grab me by the hips, pull me like the tide, show me how to kiss, making me breathless, whisper tenderly and love me reckless. Greet me like the sea greets the sand. Like the sea greets the sand, greet me and love me reckless, whisper tenderly, making me breathless. Show me how to kiss, pull me like the tide, grab me by the hips, flood the beach at night. Tell me how the moon and the stars glow in the dark, where seagulls sing a lullaby, where sunsets emblazon the sky, where lightning and clouds collide, where the sea meets the sand. I'll meet you there.
Thank you for the encore poems. Does anybody else have one? Anything last minute you want to throw out here? Anything you want to share? I saw your face move.
Imani Rose has one. Yes, you do.
It doesn't relate. I guess I can read it. It doesn't relate though.
It all relates because we're all here.
Fair enough. This one's long. Okay. I wake up driving. That is to say, I wake up while I'm driving, which is to say, I'm awake while I'm driving most of the time. I'm awake and I'm not. Awake driving, awake breathing, awake enough. Functioning. Fading in and out of thought. The brain of a child calls it autopilot, invisibility spell. It is fugue state. Blink and we're somewhere else. Someone else. Breathing a body that's forgotten us. A list of imaginary items. My heart, my heart, my heart. A reason for, a reason for. Please God, forgive me. I am an artist, weak at the feet of divinity, knelt only to muse, tied to scales acting more like seesaw, or whatever the fuck childhood nostalgia feels like when you've blacked out most of what actually happened in lieu of dreams. Please God, forgive me. I have only been dreaming, both yesterday and 10 years ago. Lessons chased me into corners, showed me exactly how to kneel in prayer and ask for forgiveness for not knowing better. But if you know or ever knew how happiness works, looks, show me better. Break my soul into him, bones, like bones underneath too many churches for far too many arbitrary sins. That's it.
That's an encore poem right there. No more? Any more? Yes. Maybe. No. Seeing a lot of head shakes. Feeling it. All right, cool. Thank you, everybody. And so, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm going to have a couple closing words, and then all of us in our Zoom screen, when I end our broadcast, will be still on in our Zoom. Say goodbye. We can say all those cool things. And for all those watching, remember to connect with us. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. This is our YouTube. Subscribe, like, comment, all those things all the other YouTube people say. You know, do all the cool stuff. I don't know what the bell means. I think there's a bell somewhere. I don't really understand it. If you see it, click it, I guess. And join us. Email ghost@nervousghostpress.org if you want to sign up. Anybody can sign up at any time for every month. And if we hit our limit of like 50,000 people, then we'll just move on to the next month. But anybody is welcome. All people, everybody. If you're a dancer, a math person, anyone, you have a philosophical theory that you want to share with the world, hop on, share your theory. All of it is art. It comes from somewhere from inside of us. We use it as strength. We use it as power to live through our existences, to grow, to bleed, to love, to hate, to live. And so we'll see you all October 16th at 6 o'clock Pacific. We're excited. We'll also have a Halloween show on October 30th, that Saturday, because on the 31st we're all going to be out, dressed up as things. I don't know, whatever people dress up as. I was a skeleton. I like being a skeleton. Maybe I'll be that again. But again, I appreciate everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.